Welcome to the Hyperpolyglot Activist, Learn Languages, Make a Difference. My name is Dr. Carlos Yebra Lopez and today we're here to talk about a fundamental question. Why flags do not and should not represent languages? Stay tuned. First, why flags do not represent languages. A flag is a piece of cloth that acts as a symbol for a country, a nation, or an institution. However, many institutions have several official languages. Think for instance of United Nations or the European Union. In addition to this, many countries and nations have several official languages as well as many unofficial languages. Think for instance of South Africa, which features 10 plus official languages alone. And then we have countries which do not have any official language at all, such as the United States of America. On the other hand, languages can hardly be reduced to any single country or nation. For instance, the Spanish language is spoken as an official language in 20 plus countries. In addition to this, there are languages which do not have any associated flag. Unlike Yiddish, Ladino or Judeo-Spanish does not have any flag. In addition to this, sign languages does not feature any flag at all. Are there exceptions to this? Of course, and this happens mostly with conlangs or constructed languages. Think for instance of Esperanto, which is a language that was artificially designed by a Polish linguist and features its own flag. Now that flag doesn't stand for any country, nation or institution. Instead, it stands for the language of Esperanto alone. So except for these instances, such as flags for constructed languages, this is why flags do not represent languages. Second, why flags should not represent languages? And the answer is very simple. Flags are not neutral symbols. Instead, because of their socio-political context, they often have unwanted connotations. So for instance, when I was living in Shanghai, I often went to polyglot meetings where people were wearing the flag of Taiwan. Now, is Taiwan part of China? Well, if you ask the United Nations, they will say that Taiwan is in fact an independent country. However, if you ask the Chinese government, they will tell you that Taiwan is a region that belongs to China. So, wearing a flag from Taiwan may come across the wrong way. Something similar happens with the flag of Kosovo. Is Kosovo an independent country? Well, it depends on who you ask. If you ask in Montenegro, they will tell you that Kosovo is in fact an independent country. Whereas if you ask in Serbia, you are likely to encounter a very different reaction. In broader terms, the key point to understand here is that flags are banal instances of nationalism, and that as such they are linked to the colonial linguistic ideology of modernity, which equates a given language to a specific nation-state. For instance, Spanish to Spain, German to Germany, English to England, French to France. This ideological exercise of essentialism and homogeneization stands in a stark contrast with a world that is increasingly characterized by hybridity, superdiversity, and linguistic as well as identitarian mixture. And just before you rush to any conclusion, I would like to address an objection that I've heard oftentimes, which I call the lesser evil argument. And it goes something like this. Sure, using flags is not 100% fair or accurate, but at the end of the day, it's just the most vivid fashion that we have to convey languages. It is catchy, it is easier to draw attention than just texts, and there aren't any real alternatives to it. So a realistic alternative is, instead of using flags, just use the name of the language in its local format. So for instance, instead of using the US, the British or the Canadian flag to represent English, just use the word English. Instead of using the Spanish flag to represent Spanish, just use Español. Not Spanish in English, but Español, meaning Spanish, in the local language you represent. And instead of writing Chinese, just write 中文 using simplified Chinese characters. And there are many advantages to using names of the languages in their local format over using flags. For instance, unlike the use of flags, the use of the names of the languages in their local format is not inaccurate. In addition to this, using the names of the languages in their local format is nowhere near as problematic or offensive, since unlike the use of flags, it doesn't mean endorsing colonialism and or nationalism. And finally, you will realize that many people don't know which flag corresponds to which country, which is a problem we get rid of if we use the name of those languages in their local format. You might say, well, yes, this sounds good theoretically, but in practice nobody really uses this system. And you will be wrong. Just go to your Mac, for instance, keyboard preferences, and select the language. Now, what is the format of that language? You'll see that is the name of that language in its local format. It is not a flag, but the name of the language in its local format. Now, surely there are also flags that are used in Mac to stand for languages, but if you pay attention, those flags stand for local varieties of languages. So, for instance, the flag of Spain doesn't stand for Spanish as a whole, but rather for the local variety of Spanish in Spain. And also, when I was in Paris, and I used to attend many polyglot events before the pandemic hit, I remember attending two main polyglot events. One of them was Mundo Lingo, and the other one was the Polyglot Club. Now, in Mundo Lingo, they use flags to stand for languages, but in the Polyglot Club, they actually use languages in their local format. So it's really an alternative that is feasible, it's practical, and it has been already implemented with success, both in the computer industry as well as in polyglot events. And finally, just a brief reminder that the purpose of this video is not to tell people what to do, rather it is to raise awareness as to the political and problematic implications of a practice that I've seen every day in the polyglot community, i.e. the use of flags to represent languages. So I hope I have cleared up why flags do not and should not represent languages, and as always, thanks for watching.